Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the DJ Sessions presents the Virtual Sessions. I'm your host Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and you might hear some jets flying by because it's Seafair weekend. So if you hear some noises, it'll blow you away. But anyways, I'm here with Homemade Spaceship, aka Rob Levere. Rob, how you doing today?
Doing excellent, Darren, man. Stoked to be here.
Awesome. Where are you coming in from? Where you live?
I'm living out in Denver, Colorado. Yeah.
Denver, Colorado. Okay, not too far from Seattle.
Yeah, not too far. Originally from like the Chicago suburbs area.
Right
Lived
on.
in Chicago for a bit. Came out to Colorado and ended up kind of doing the music thing out here. Love it.
I was there in 2013, right after they passed the legalization of marijuana, and I went to the Cannabis Cup, and there was two conventions they did. One of them was the retail side of things, so all the people that sold pipes and bongs and paraphernalia and all that kind of stuff was the day before, and then they had this fenced off area outside where it was like cannabis central. You got 20 girls on a tent rolling up joints, handing them out for free to everyone. I was part of a company called Magical Butter, and there was an infuser machine, and they infused pork pulled sandwiches. The funny thing was, nobody could sell. I mean, they bought this big old thing of pork, made these pulled pork sandwiches. The thing was so funny is nobody in that zone could sell any cannabis. So you could give it away for free, but what they did is they sell a pencil for $5, and then you get a sandwich along with it.
That's great.
That was and when Ford
worked before.
And imagine,
before and like all sorts of stuff, but like pulled pork infusion, like
they took these huge needles and they infused the pork with it because the chef Joey was like they had this chef on board that was just awesome. But my most memorable memory though was, and we'll get into the music side of things in a minute, was they had this area set up and it was probably about 2 football fields, like as long, maybe even longer and wider, 2 football fields, and when 420 hit, there was so much smoke you couldn't see like that quarter of the way through. It was that smoky there. On 420. It was just crazy, man. Crazy.
Yeah, I came out to Colorado originally to grow weed, found out I was terrible at it. And ended up just doing music, which is funny. But yeah, I love it there. I played a Cannabis Cup event thing one time, and it was funny. I was they're handing out all those free samples. You just had the little thing you put over the pipe or whatever. It was a weird, crazy situation, but it was fun times. But
yeah, definitely. But hey, let's get to the music stuff here. Homemade Spaceship. Yeah, I know you probably get asked this all the time. First question out of the gate: what's the story behind your artist name? Where does it come from?
So like, I mean, so the cool story, I think, like I'll get down to like the actual like events of it, but like for me, like everyone has something, right? They have that one thing, whether it's knitting or playing video games or going on hikes or riding your bike or skateboarding or whatever it is. We all kind of have one thing that sort of allows us to escape from the planet, escape from Earth. Feel like, taxes don't matter and rent isn't due, and like, you're just in your happy place, And so like music for that is definitely me, and that's why it just like makes sense to name my music project that, because it's just kind of like my own little spaceship that I built myself out of stuff that I had lying around, and I can go into my own world, and stuff like that. But the more reason behind it, honestly, is so like just kind of came to me one day, because I think one of the big inspirations, I've always loved space. I've always been obsessed. Like, second I remember the librarian, like I checked out like one of the space books, and the librarian was like, space goes on forever. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, for like first grade me, I'm like, forever? Like, I can't even comprehend that, kind of like messed me up and blew my mind. So always had a big infatuation with space. And I remember I always used to pretend my mom's minivan was like a spaceship when I was a kid too, and like just a whole world of imagination and stuff like that. And I was living in Chicago, and I was like 18 or something like that, and my buddy was trying to start a studio, and he had all this gear, but he couldn't keep it at his house that he lived at for some reason, so he was keeping it at my place because we could be loud there, stuff like that. One day I just felt like, man, I'm in like my own little spaceship. I felt like I was back in the van, and like my childhood imagination was soaring, and I was having so much fun, and like rent wasn't due, like nothing was bothering me. I was living in the moment, and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, and that kind of is just kind of like how it sort of came to be. It's just kind of like this big imaginarium of a thing, and it's always just kind of made sense for me, and thought it was just really, really, appropriate to call it the homemade spaceship. And I think that kind of like became like a little bit of a term. Like it's like let's hop in the space beat lab, let's hop in the spaceship. What are you doing? Like, because I lived with a musician roommate too and stuff like that. My old friend Noah was like, let's get in the spaceship for a couple hours. I was like, our little homemade spaceship, man, like, had a ring to it. So yeah, that's kind of like the forefront story, man. It's just like everyone has a homemade spaceship, and it's like everyone has their own little escape that they have, whatever. And music's mine, and it's like, so I call that, and it's like, hey man, hop on my ship and I'll take you to where I go, take you to my happy place. And yeah, and that's basically it. I like to have that sort of vibe with my music. I always like, I've been very existential and like a lot more than club kind of stuff. Like, clubs are fun and all that stuff, and I respect the hell out of the culture and everything that came from it. But like, I definitely feel like my music is more of like not for the clubs, and it's electronic music that's a little bit more for like just like
And speaking of your music, your
yeah.
new album just came out,
Oh, it's
Electric
coming out.
Indigo.
Dropping
Oh, it's coming
single.
out.
Yes, yes. So it's essentially my first real album. I think I put out like a
Okay.
9-track album like when I very first started. The first 9 crappiest beats I ever made, I put out on Bandcamp or something like that. So I'm calling this like my debut album. Yeah, and it drops August 17th
Okay.
everywhere. But I've dropped the first 2 singles so far. The third single is coming out in 2 days. And yeah, it's called Ghost Ride the Spaceship. And yeah, I'm super stoked. It's the first full length album. The first song I dropped was one of those very existential, prettier tunes. So if you're more of a fan of, I don't know, I would say that one's definitely kind of like a little bit of like sort of like a Pretty Lights Grizz meets Millennium kind of vibe. It's very soulful. I sampled.
I just went to the Millennium concert here in Washington.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He is huge. He had that huge 50,000 person concert here. But yeah, I sampled an old blues vocal. John the Revelator is the name of the song. It's old blues artist named Sunhouse, and that's the vocal in it. So it's like very soulful. I use this like virtual mellotron on a lot of that track and a lot of those other types of songs. And a mellotron, for people at home, it's a recreation. So it's a virtual version of it, because the real versions are like 50 grand if you can even get one. But it's like something that Led Zeppelin used to use, and I think Elton John and like other people like that. But you basically press a key on a keyboard and it plays a reel of tape. And so you could record whatever you wanted onto the reel of tape. So it's these very vintagey like flutes and stuff like that. I got the flute solo on there. Been learning flute over like the past year and a half to add to the beats, which has been really fun. I play guitar over my stuff too live, and I do a lot of guitar incorporated and real instrument type of stuff.
And you had some really awesome collaborations there too on this album, right?
Actually, there's no collaborations on this album. I just done quite a few cool collaborations.
Oh,
I've
I
got
guess.
a collaboration with my friend Sodown in the works. I just dropped a really great remix for Maddie O'Neill, and we dropped another collab recently. My good friend Vibe Squad, I made a really great collab with. It's doing a lot better than I expected.
I see. I read that wrong. I missed the has led to part. I just had said collaborations with.
Yeah, no, I want
on
to
your
keep the
PR.
album very, very much myself. Something that I personally, it's like a little bit of a pet peeve is like when I go to get to know an artist and they don't have an album and all their tracks are collabs with other people. It's like, well, what's your sound? What do you give? So I really wanted to give like my fan base and my audience like a real honest chapter of just straight up me, Yeah. The first song, Real Pretty, right? The second song is much more of like a funky. The idea behind it was like if you were partying with an alien and you decided to jam and like make a tune together or something like that, which is becoming more and more realistic of a thing that could actually happen if you've been watching the news, I guess, too. So, Aliens Are Real. Love that. Yeah, the next one's gonna be like a really heavy dubstep song.
Okay.
So I like to go kind of pretty and also really heavy. My live shows definitely always like to kind of start off real heavy and stuff like that. And then the last one's another pretty one. But yeah, super stoked on the album. I wrote it with a concept for the first time. So I decided to write like a concept album. Something I've found in my creative process through studying, like especially like hip hop and like just past electronic music and stuff like that, and then all sorts of other stuff. Arbitrary restrictions are something like giving myself restrictions or guidelines when I create has been just like hugely paramount to my creative process. So I was doing it kind of here and there with songs, and I was like, what if I did it with like a whole group of songs? What if I did it with an album? And I was like, well, duh, dummy, that's called a concept album. That's been happening for years. You know, I also invented the affogato the other day. I was like, what if I put ice cream in my coffee? And someone's like, yeah, that's called something already. So, you know, so so I decided to write a concept album, and the concept behind it is sort of the story, which is slightly inspired by me, but I hope it's kind of more like a universal thing. But it's kind of like this story that there's a wannabe spaceman, a dude who just wants to get away super bad. And so he decides to build his own spaceship in his garage and blast off out of the Earth's atmosphere. And that's the first song. It's called Kick Dust, and I sampled the John F. Kennedy moon speech in there. So it's like, we must go to the moon and we must leave Earth and we have to go. And it's an amazing speech and so cool. I found so much passion from sampling, like in a very, like, I think the words in like powerful and brazen, like speech, because it was really good. And So that was cool. And that one's got a lot of energy and it's up tempo. And then, of course, the next part of the story, chapter two, you finally leave the solar system and you encounter a debaucherous alien named Astro Jones, which is the last one that just released. And that's like if you met it, you're just traveling through space, you meet an alien, and he's all like, "Oh, you look cool. You look cool. Like you want to hang out?" It's like, "Oh, I make music. Like I make music too. Let's jam." And so I was like, I imagined myself whipping out my flute on the spaceship. So I played the little flute riff, and that's how that kind of started. And I was like, I'm just gonna take a flute riff and add as many like just blubs and wobbles and cool like bass sounds underneath it, because that would be the alien and the flute is me. So it's like a combination of the earthly cultures and the outer space cultures.
You
Uh,
know, if you had to pick one of your productions as your most favorite one, which one would that be? And is there a thought behind it for it to be your favorite?
on the album or overall?
You know, I was gearing that question on the album, um, but why don't we go both? Is there one?
I mean, Electric Indigo for sure on the album. That song came from like I was going through some really hard times in my life with just a lot of things changing and happening, and a lot of crazy substance abuse issues and stuff like that, and just the pandemic really just keeping me down. And that song, I finally wrote that song when I felt like I was turning the corner on everything, and it felt like I was finally seeing like a bright light for the first time and stuff like that. And I wrote that song in like 2 hours, and it was just done. And I was like, this is not going anywhere. This is how it is. So I love that song for that a lot. But honestly, my favorite song I've ever put out is called "Built for the Wild," I think, and it's just weird. And personally, I've always battled this whole thing of feeling like I need to fit in versus doing what I want as an artist, because I've done what I've wanted before, and nobody cares. And then it's like, or like, how do we book you? Like, sorry, you can't play with you can't play with Excision, but you also can't play with Tycho. It's like, come on, So like, that song's really cool because that song was really organic in the way it was written. I actually wrote that with my photographer friend Frankie, and he's like, "Oh, I play guitar," and he picks up my guitar and he plays like the most serene, cool riff, and I'm just like, "Oh, turn on the delays, turn on the reverb," and then really quickly we turned it into a really weird song, and the whole arrangement's weird. It's just a minute long intro, and it's like a minute long drop, and it's like 2.5 minutes, but it seems really long, and it's a very beautiful song, I think, which is really cool. It's on the last song on my last EP I put out, I think almost 2 years ago now. Please Abduct Me. But it's got Built for the Wild, and that song just has a lot of layers, and the way it evolves, it's not really like any other song necessarily that I've seen in sort of like the genre. And I was just really proud of myself too, to like kind of just say screw it and put out something on the EP that might not fit in or might be weird, because I got a lot of like random fans kind of through Instagram who had discovered that song, and they would just message me and be like, "This is the dopest thing I've ever heard," and just getting that reaffirmment from people like, "Hey, you went out on a ledge and did something that might not be in the dress code or might not fit in or might not necessarily, you're giving birth to something that might not necessarily have a home, but like people really love it, people really took it in." And yeah, it's 100 BPM. It's got like a deep house drop at the end, like, and it's a weird tune, but it's really special to me, and other people have told me it's really special to them too. So that's probably the my favorite hidden gem, my favorite song I've probably put out. Um, but yeah, it's a interesting one. Oh, I can't hear you. I think your mic.
I did mute because I had a siren going by.
Oh yeah, cool.
I was asking you, do you play the guitar? Do
Yeah,
you play any other acoustic instruments? And
yeah.
tell us about your live show setup.
Okay, yeah. So I've been playing guitar since I was like 12. I was like a punk rocker, turned into a metalhead, and yeah. So I've always been playing guitar. Um, Really technical guitar player. I did a lot of my favorite styles, like I call it like 8 finger tapping, kind of, where you don't even really necessarily strum. You just kind of like press all your fingers down and stuff like that. If you listen to like stuff like Animals as Leaders and Sean or something like that, you might be familiar. But yeah, so playing guitar my whole life. I've also been playing bass and drums and keyboards too. When I grew up, definitely wasn't one of the popular kids in high school. Definitely was like a big nerd. And me and my friends essentially always went to either my friend Ben or Jared's. And I also had an old shed in the back of my house that we turned into a jam space eventually. But like, we go over to one of our houses and we would play, like, we would just jam ska music, metal, like whatever we were feeling. We were emo kids at the time and stuff like that. So like, whatever was cool, and we would just go jam. So we'd always rotate the instruments. So that was really cool. It's like, "Oh, you don't play drums?" It was like, "Too bad, you do now." So we all had to learn all the instruments, and then graduating high school and stuff like that, I kind of I had those kind of under my belt, and I got better and better, and I got more into music, and I ended up working at some studios in Chicago, and just being around music all the time. And I was also playing in a couple bands. I had like this post rock kind of band, like this Explosions in the Sky type band. I also played in this like hardcore metal band for a while. So always around instruments constantly, always doing music. Um, yeah, so always played those. Guitar's definitely my main instrument. Pretty trash at piano, honestly, for how long I've been playing. But I can still edit it and get the point across. But it wasn't actually recently till I think it was like 2 years ago that I picked up the flute. So I started playing that too, and that just sort of came to be because I make like I like to think I like to make like a sort of like mystical post rock hip hoppy kind of like sample based kind of sound. Wu Tang is a huge inspiration, and the RZA for sure, and all of his productions. And so like I feel like Lord Finesse to Premier, all those dudes like. Really inspired me, and kind of wanted to make a more spacey hip hop type sound. And I kept finding myself using flute loops off of like Splice or various websites, and they're all trash. They're so bad. It's like, dude, I just want a smooth little Ron Burgundy like little thing, and you're giving me this airy like like sounds like you're spitting on the mic, or it's like way distorted or something. And I was like, I'm so frustrated. I was like, like I'm in my meditation era and stuff like that. And I'm just like, what do I do about this? Like, and I was like, dude, learn how to play flute. Like, fifth graders learn how to play flute. Like I think your 28-year-old, 29-year-old has to figure it out. Yeah, I just bought one on Amazon, and that was my first flute. And just YouTube videos, and then recently I started taking lessons. Shout out Maggie, she's an awesome flute teacher. But yeah, it's keeping me honest too, learning the flute, which is really cool because I feel like I'm as good at guitar as I want to get. I'm as good at piano as I need to be. I can play whatever I want on the drums and stuff like that. Bass is just like an easier version of guitar to me. But flute's like a new challenge, and I feel like that really kept me humble, and kept me like hardworking and stuff like that to kind of start over with the flute. And it's my first real woodwind or wind instrument, and it's insane because I constantly am forgetting to breathe, like when I'm playing it on stage and stuff.
So what about this live show setup? It sounds like you're mixing technology with
Yeah,
the acoustic instruments, correct?
yeah, yeah. So my live show setup, what I do, so I perform out of Ableton. And I use Ableton for my performance. And what I have to do is I have to like split up my songs. I have to stem out my songs to a degree. So I have stem intros and stem outros is how I do it most of the time. So I pick apart parts of the song and I render those out and I put those into separate clips into Ableton. And then when I need to go into the fully mastered beefy track, I have that whole track loaded up. And then often I just remove either the guitar or the flute parts. And then I'll play those live, and do that. But so I just basically go deck A to deck B, kind of, but with lots of different loops in there and stuff like that for each track, and kind of like it's kind of like how I feel like regular DJs kind of see a cue point. I use these loops because my songs too, like I said, they're not really for the club. They're not necessarily really for a mix. For example, one of my biggest inspirations, so I get to go see tomorrow for the first time in like 7 years, is Pretty Lights. And Pretty Lights didn't mix crap, man. He was like, here's my song and here's the next one, enjoy. And I do enjoy, like, I'm from Chicago, like I said, so I've seen like Frankie Knuckles perform and stuff like that, and you can't deny the magic of mixing after seeing an absolute legend like Frankie Knuckles perform and just bring in all sorts of stuff, and you're just like, what the, like, like, how did he get from Whitney Houston to this? Like, what are we doing? Like, so like, I respect that a lot. So I try my best to mix everything, and I also like that feeling of a journey, not just sort of like, here's songs, here's another song. I like I said, Pretty Light's my favorite artist, so I'm obviously not throwing any shade. I let the man do what he does because I think he's like the Don. But yeah, but like, not really necessarily meant to be mixed. I think that comes down to like the arrangement too. Like there's kind of a lot more going on. I'm writing. I like to think that like I like some people write songs and other people write beats, and it's just a spectrum. And some people write songs and beats, but I think that there's a difference. Like a beat is very mixable. It starts off with just a kick, and it leads in, with the lead, and then it builds up as to where a song can just sort of explode out the gate, which you might not want to do with like a more like club friendly song or something like that. So yeah, live guitar, live flute, keeps me honest, keeps like the music fresh, I feel like, and keeps the crowd really excited. And I love doing it too because it makes me feel like I'm on the edge. Like the crowd is trusting me, especially if they don't know me. Like, I'm trusting you that we have a good time here, and like they're on edge with me, so it seems more fair for me to sort of be on that edge with them. Like, here, I'm gonna give you guys music, and it's completely live, and I may fuck this up right now, or I may mess this up, or whatever, and we're just here, having a good time,
So, talking about having a good time doing shows, tell us about the Cervantes headline show. What's that?
Cervantes is like home to me, man. Cervantes is like where I definitely came up. If for anyone who doesn't know, Cervantes is like this venue in Denver in Five Points, and it was an old like casino cabaret and stuff like that became a venue at some point. And they have the other side, and they have the Masterpiece Ballroom, right? And it was my first shows. We're at the other side. The first show I sold out. was at the other side, and I've just known all the people who work there and stuff like that since I was, like just started doing this. I think I got to Colorado when I was like 24 or something like that, 23. And yeah, I started going there, and they had all the best bass shows. They did the Submission Deep Dubstep Tuesdays. They did all the electro soul. We call it retro futurism, when Mikey Thunder and like Michael Menard and them were like throwing these parties out there. And Yeah, so Cervantes is like home base to me. So we're doing the main room this time because yeah, I've sold out the other side a couple times, and just yeah, doing the main room. It's going to be awesome. I'm super stoked. We've got a really killer lineup. My friend Lucid Vision is doing direct support, and he's just been alongside me on this journey the whole time. He was one of my first friends out here for sure. And then I got this dude Philanthropy, who is awesome. Makes just like really rowdy, great bass music. Um, yeah, really awesome dude too. Then I have my friend Louis Letdown, who is just a really dope. He's kind of like more of a hip hop rapper dude, and he does more like electronic hip hop stuff and things like that. So he's on the bill too. And then I have one of my students, Winslow, who is just he's one of my favorite students because he just makes the most imaginative music, and it's very cool and different. So I was stoked to give him a shot. But yeah, we're bringing out a ridiculous amount of lasers. My friend Vaughn, who was actually my first gig out here, I played a crazy mountain bass party. Everything I ever dreamed of. Moved out to Colorado for. We got a bunch of PK speakers, and we're taking them in a truck up to the mountains to this place where we can be as loud as we want. And he had just gotten like his first couple lasers like 8 years ago or whatever, and now he's got like 15. So, and yeah, lost my job at Guitar Center the next day after that party. So yeah, but hey, it's always good to move on from a job at Guitar Center.
Yeah.
You,
Here's something for you. Do you think most artists should focus more on the quality of music and performance instead of image and outfits?
I think that it's honestly it's everything, man. You can't choose there. Like it's crazy. Like one of my favorite bands is Nine Inch Nails, and I love Trent Reznor. I love what he stands for, and I can see what he stands for versus how he dresses and how he acts. Also, it is a little. I think it's a little overwhelming too. But like being on social media these days and being an artist, it's almost like you constantly have your own TV show, and you constantly need to put out new episodes and content. And it's like you don't have to show yourself. I know a bunch of like really great artists who are coming up who like aren't doing like they don't know what they look like and stuff like that, which I think is cool. But it is like a total package. And I would love to like I feel like the staunch musician take would be like it's all about the music. It's always been about the music, but that's not the same for anything else. It's not the same for like restaurants. I feel like, it is about the food, but like I'm never gonna find your restaurant if it doesn't look like it appeals to me. And other people are just missing out if you don't make it look like it appeals to them. So like us being in the spotlight as artists or content creators or whatever we are nowadays, it's overwhelming as all heck. And it's a lot to keep up with, and it's real tough on the old mental health and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's really important that you as a musician gather your tribe. And like for me, it's like really important that like, like I want to gather all the introverted, existential, nerdy weirdos and everyone, like we're all here, man. We're all out here, and I can like bring us all together, man. And so I think it is important that you do put out what you got. You advertise yourself because we're getting into a world with media where it seems like, to me at least, we're like mainstream media and MTV and TRL and the radio and Billboard. It's like nobody gives a crap anymore. Like, and it's like no, like, and like everyone has Spotify or Tidal or Apple Music, and it's like I can listen to whatever I want. I can fall into whatever genre I want. Maybe I like Witch House. Maybe I'm into, golden era hip hop. Maybe I just want to listen to classic rock. Maybe I'm into hyper pop. But like I don't have to be spoon fed everything.
I was just talking with somebody about this yesterday in an interview, Coke Beats, and we were talking about when we grew up, we had, we had records. We had 8-track. We then went to cassette tapes. Then we went to CDs. And when you put that cassette tape in, you had to carry your bag of cassettes with you if you wanted to listen to one track here and one before. And then singles came out. 99-cent singles finally came out in the 90s, which was nice because then you could just play the single track of it and then you can kind of DJ from there. Then CDs came out and then you got the multi CD player. But once the iPad or iPod dropped,
Yeah.
that was a game changer because it gave you the ability, and as much the more the memory increased on that, you could literally go from a rock and roll song to a hip hop song to a classical song to and you had your whole musical library in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
And then you go into something now where you go to Spotify and you have the curated playlists. You just turn on and say, I want to listen to this, and you're listening to artists you don't even know who they are, and they're coming and going, whoa, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
That's where it's really kind of crazy, the progression of music. I don't know how old you are, but I turned 49 this year.
Okay.
And to actually have vinyl in my hand and have to put that on, or an 8-track in the player to play that was very short lived in my genre. It went pretty quick right over to cassette tapes. But when CDs hit, you could put a CD on repeat, and that was kind of cool. But if you got the massive player, like I was saying, but when that iPod dropped, that was just the game changer. You could like so many different genres, and I think again with the advent of, like you said, YouTube or all the outlets, the control that was put there by MTV, the media, the news, whatever it was, it's not there. So anyone could say, I'm going to pick up a microphone and start singing. If you went and tried to do an audition or even if you made a music video in your backyard and put it up to send it over to MTV, they're not going to touch it. But if you put it on your YouTube channel, we had public access, but public access was limited to the county you lived in. That's where I started in television. But now you can put it on YouTube, and that might go viral, and you get 1 million downloads on TikTok. And you're sitting there going, "Whoa!"
The ability of what we could get, like I was saying, like it was only what was on MTV or the radio is what all I knew for music, right?
Yeah.
And then we got LimeWire and MySpace and stuff like that. I remember MySpace, just like I felt like I was truly in the underground because I could search around this band's page and listen to this band's music, and then I could look at their top 8 or whatever, be like, who's this band's friends with? Finding out music that no one wants me to find out about. But like you said too, like TikTok, man, and I think that's one of the craziest things, and that's something everyone likes to shame TikTok and stuff like that. But I really feel like one thing that it does is it allows us to generate our own media, and Lord knows if that's being controlled or anything like that, but it's whatever's popular or whatever's cool or whatever, gives everyone their little good brain chemical thing happen, that's what rises to the top now. And it's no longer whatever, a corporation bought and wants to sell to you, because that's kind of, I feel like the music industry used to happen was we see potential in an artist, we're going to give them a bunch of money on a loan in advance, right? And then we're going to put them to work paying back that. And if they make more money than they advanced from us, then we can sign them for another advance even higher and keep making money off these musicians.
And here's something, we were talking about the social media phenomenon and how it's a very tough game to upkeep. And this is going more towards your live performance, but it can also apply directly to social media as well. Do you become a different person when you get on stage? And do you become a different person when you get off stage?
Yes, 100%, man. Yeah, but when I'm off stage, I'm very introverted and very reserved, and I don't know. I feel like I'm very nerdy. I can be a little goofy sometimes. I can get a little silly, right? But when I'm on stage, I yell and I like to get as hype as possible and stuff like that, and definitely not like that in real life. I actually, before I go on stage, my preset ritual is I do just kind of some air karate and just jumps and I don't know, just all sorts of weird stuff, and just get myself really hyped. And I love to just go out onto the stage and grab the microphone and just scream into it and stuff like that. Yeah, so I'm definitely a very different person off stage. than I am on stage. I'm definitely only like that when I'm on stage, and there's definitely a wide range of who I am off stage. But who I am on stage, I definitely feel like it almost feels like playing a character sometimes, but the character is the person you always wanted to be, kind of in a way. Like I don't know, it's a weird thing, you know. But
Well,
yeah,
does a bigger crowd satisfy you more? Like, does it make you go crazier, or is there some other magical element that satisfies you when it comes to playing music for a crowd of people?
you know, I love big crowds. It's so cool to share my music with that many people at once, and like the energy is palpable. But there's nothing better than a crowd that's just getting down and freaking out, you know, and just going nuts to your music. So if you're asking me if I would rather choose to play like 5,000 people and everyone's just kind of standing there, or if I would rather play for like 500 people and everyone's going absolutely berserk, definitely the latter. Because that's just like there's so much energy in the room, and I'm a big believer in all that kind of just like energy and shit like that, and like to have that, to have all these people like going nuts. And most of my sets are all original too, so it's like it's so cool for me to be like, I made this in my little bedroom, and now everyone's going crazy to it on the dance floor. It's like the little point of conception to like here we are is like it's so cool. So yeah, I love the big crowds for sure. I love those festival crowds and stuff like that. Um, but those small lit rooms are just something super super special, especially in small towns. I feel like is where that happens too. Like I'll go out to like like somewhere in like Kentucky or like or something like that, or I was just in Boone, North Carolina, and like it was a small room, and but the people were nuts and they wanted the party so hard. And yeah, they loved the music and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's just more about the overall impact that you have on people, with your music. I hope I was able to take you away from the monotony for a bit. And if you're gonna, lose your stuff on the dance floor, like that's more worth it to me than just playing in front of a bunch of people, I would say. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about your musical past earlier on. How you grew up with your friends and you had to learn the instruments and all that fun stuff. But who has really been your biggest influence when it comes to your career as an artist, and why?
So my biggest influence is it's funny because it's got to be. I had my best friend growing up, Kevin. He had an older brother who was like 5 or 4 years older than us, and Luke was his name, and Luke was just the coolest dude ever. He drew dope pictures, and his room was all full of crazy shit. But Luke got us into in the 5th grade. He got us into Wu Tang and Tool.
Oh,
So I got Wu Tang Iron Flag. He's like, this Wu Tang shit just dropped. Y'all gotta check this out. He gave us Iron Flag. I remember, and Rules is still one of my favorite songs. But Wu Tang, and then shortly after that, he was like, "You ought to check this out too," and he gave us a Tool album. And like the dichotomy between Tool and Wu Tang Clan has ended me up here because I love the flowiness and the heaviness of Tool, and like and like how mystical it kind of is and stuff like that, and almost mysterious or whatever. But like that bounce that RZA had on all those beats, and just the style and the tenacity that every member of the Wu Tang Clan, um, comes with and stuff like that, and the style from Wu Tang Clan, and the depth and heaviness from Tool, I think are probably my two biggest inspirations. Um, Personally, on another personalization, my other big inspiration is Blink 182. That was like the band that I got into, and I just love how much they don't care, how bland and just like aggressive, and just like I don't know. I love how their music is just very simple and direct and almost stupid, and I love how unseriously they take themselves too. Which is something I've always wanted to carry on into my career, is like fart jokes and stuff like that, like heck yeah. But yeah, definitely when it comes to the electronic stuff and the music that I make now, I think there's something that's been burned into my head about the Wu Tang Tool combination.
that's a pretty interesting combination. 'Cause I grew
Yeah,
up with my brothers, and they were into punk rock, they were into Black Sabbath, they were into Iron Maiden, and I liked pop music. I like Michael Jackson. I mean, I think they respected like artists like Michael Jackson or Madonna, that pop culture stuff. And then they got new wave, and then Nine Inch Nails and that stuff came in. But I started gravitating towards hip hop music as a kid. And my first concert I ever went to was the Beastie Boys in 1986. I was 12 years old, and I saw the Beastie Boys with Fishbone. And then a year later, they came back, and I saw them again at 13 years old with Run DMC. And so, but my brothers were going to that concert, and that crossover album with the Beastie Boys coming in was cool. But I grew up with a very heavy rock influence, older brother thing, But here I am, a gravitated towards rap, and then later found myself getting more into electronic music. It was just interesting that progression that you kind of go through. But like you said, that Tool, yeah, that I would literally have Black Sabbath on, and then I go to like UTFO,
Yeah,
or something like the kids in the neighborhood didn't know what to do with me, like what? Or then you get some violent femmes in there or something,
Oh, yeah, I think back on it, it's almost like I had all the bases covered.
Yeah.
It's like I got the best of both worlds right here.
I felt my father really put on us, you'd say, a musically diverse kind of background. He was into Queen and Supertramp and those kind of artists, and I think those were that really helped define all of our musical palettes in that sense.
Yeah.
Anyways, but moving on, if somebody were to write a biography about you, what do you think the title should be?
Spaceman Lost in Space. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. The Finite Voyage. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. Something about being grimy. My friends used to call me the homeless spaceman because I was always sleeping on their couches and shit like that. And so something about being grimy, probably, and just like heading towards going on a journey. Feels like if I was to say anything, I feel like my whole life's just been this expedition into the unknown, as I feel like almost anyone could say. Yeah, I think something along those lines of going on a voyage. I'm a huge Carl Sagan fan too, so like Voyager and all that sort of stuff, and the Pioneer and all that stuff is really big to me. Cosmos. I've read so many of Carl Sagan's books. He's a huge inspiration to my whole mindset and stuff like that. But something very Carl Sagan-y comes to mind, Yeah, that's got to be it. It's got to be something about just going on a grimy voyage, somewhere which really feels like touring a lot too. I feel like I'm in the deep nethers of space when I'm on tour. I'm just like rolling into an airport or a gas station, just like, what is going on? Where am I? I never forget one time I was on tour and I got out of the bus and I walked I had no idea where I was. I was in like the middle of Mississippi, and I was like, what the fuck? Where the hell am I? But yeah, the forever voyage, yeah, let's call it the something like that. Pioneer makes a move to space, like a children's book title or something like that would be funny too. Yeah, something like that, man. It's been a voyage. I've always felt like some like space pioneer, just dude exploring new frontiers in space. But it's just my life, and I'm living it every day. Always on some weird adventure. Always.
So, in space, I mean, I don't know how you would prefer space travel, but usually right now we kind of look at our point that space travel would have a lot of technology. It would be kind of a spaceship. Is that how you would envision yourself traveling through space and time, or is this a mind voyage that could kind of teleport you from one area and there isn't the physical technology needed? You'll see where I'm kind of leading in with this in a few seconds.
So if I was to write the story, the fictional story, which is what I'm kind of doing with my albums, I'm writing this like fictional space story. But it's like starts off right as you in this spaceship, just like a spaceship, and it's just boosting through the galaxy, and you're just flying, and you got a big window in front. I always think of like Interstellar and stuff like that. It's just like floating through space. just staring out the window or whatever. And nothing's going by, and then all of a sudden you see something in a distance. Maybe you end up flying by a giant nebula for a bit, and you're just like, holy cow. But I've always imagined the sci-fi twist in the story is that you learn to travel space through your consciousness or something like that, because as we learn more and more about aliens and stuff like that, it's like the aliens all communicate telepathically. They don't speak words to each other. They're just like whoop whoop whoop, and like there's been like I watch all the UFO stuff. I'm obsessed, for sure. And they're all like, it's like, I just thought a thought to them and they responded to me. And it's like, you can too just elevate your consciousness out of your body and go travel, space time and stuff like that in the fourth dimension. So that's where I see the book ending. But it starts off as like a guy who just wanted to get off Earth and go explore space, but ends up becoming a part of the fourth dimension, essentially. Like
It's really funny. One of my best friends, his burner name is Space Time.
Space time, I love that. Nice.
Yeah.
You go to Burn every year or
I
often?
don't.
Or?
I have. I've never been, but I've been to a few festivals with him, and he's a really great guy to party with. And my my nickname I got to call was Battery Pack.
Love that. Nice, dude.
Like his Space Time, I'm Battery Pack. My friend, we call her Switchblade. It was just a great year. 2017 was a fun year.
Yeah.
Anyways, speaking of technology, and where I was going to lead into this with was that technology moves really fast in the electronic music world. If you could think of something that's not on the market today, but in your vision would be really amazing, what would that be?
That's a good question. So with technology, something that I could use to make music or something like that, huh? I'm always thinking of that instrument from Futurama. I don't know if you've ever seen this episode, but it's like a sousaphone thing that he plays, and it creates the scene. But like I'm thinking, like what kind of instrument, right, would be the best possible instrument? And so it's really funny. I remember I thought of this question a while ago, and I was like, okay, like, well, if we were to make the perfect controller, like MIDI controller, whatever it was, to make music with, what would that look like? And I was like, well, you should probably make the buttons kind of long and slender because the finger's long and slender, right? And we could lay it out, in an even way or something like that. And I was like, we could even like, if they're going to be like these like long slender buttons, we should put like almost like sneak buttons in between or something like that. And I eventually invented the keyboard, which was kind of funny. Like no, dude, that once again that already exists. But I really the answer I would think about giving is saying something more like a guitar, because one of the reasons why I love the guitar so much is because of how expressive it is. I can slide, I can bend, I can vibrato, I can mute, I can play hard, I can play soft, I can strum lightly, I can strum hard, I can strum up, I can strum down. There's so many ways to approach one note on a guitar, and so I remember my old man. I remember when I was first learning how to play guitar, I was learning how to play Black Dog, right, by Led Zeppelin.
Mhm.
And I was like, check it out. I learned Black Dog, and I played it for him. He was like, you're playing the notes to Black Dog, but you're not playing Black Dog. You got to play it like. And I was like, whatever. Screw you, old man. But yeah. So like adding that expression in is something really cool. And I would love to say that I'd love to see an instrument like that, but they're really on top of it now. Have you heard of the MPE instruments, like the Push 3 or Roly keyboards? So they're these insane keyboards. They're very like soft, and like you can slide your finger up the key and it'll do whatever you want. You can press down kind of to vibrato or filter or something like that. You can slide up top. I do envision sort of something more string based to create music with, because I think those strings. So I would like to see, I guess, like an actual answer to this question would be something like more of a guitar based MIDI controller. But I'm also thinking too, like how can we reinvent the guitar in a way where it's even more playable, ergonomically or something like that. But yeah, some sort of MIDI controller that's like a guitar. and they do have some stuff like that, but it doesn't ever really work right. There's jam sticks, and I've played with one, and they're cool, they're awesome. But there's a little disconnect, and that might have been my fault on the software or something. But like, yeah, and there's like these pickups you can get that send MIDI, but they don't always work correctly and stuff like that. So it'd be really cool to see that. Another thing that I think would be really cool, um, and I actually just thought of this, but like, so they used to have these on the old Roland keyboards. They called them the D Beam, and the D Beam was just that. You know the D Beam, yeah.
I
You're a
used to,
D
I
Beam,
used to own a 505 and an SP808, and
yeah,
those were fun.
yeah,
That was a trip.
yeah. The D Beam's a good time, yeah.
Yeah,
And I want more D Beam. I want more
yeah.
of that. So I
Well,
honestly just
it
thought of like,
reminds me. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the D beam reminded me out of that scene of Virtuosity
Okay.
where Russell Crowe is playing in the club and he sampled everyone and he put his hand over something and he could
Yeah.
change it. And, he could do all this crazy stuff, but he was sampling the live noises from the crowd that he was terrorizing to then make the song with, but he was controlling with his hands. And that's where I saw the D beam going. I thought it would go out there even further. I was super
Yeah,
excited, but
you got a
never.
lap E-beam. You could throw it on my MIDI controller. I know you could, right? But like, imagine if you had like some sort of cube or something you stick your
Yeah.
hand in. That would be like super expressive because that's one of my favorite things. My 6 year old, I love to just get him on some knobs, and I'm like, here's a riff. You just tweak the filter and just be expressive. And so, if we could get into some sort of 3D expressive space that we could just like D beam from like all sides, or something like that. That could add a really, really cool expressive way. Even if that was something too, like you could plug into any MIDI controller and just be able to express things on that would be cool because adding that to music is something I definitely like to see more in music. Is that, and I'm glad you said that Russell Crowe, the virtuosity thing, because have you seen Imogen Heap's Tiny Desk concert or NPR Tiny Desk?
No, I haven't, but
It's
I
crazy. So
yeah.
watch it, but it's amazing. She's insane, but she has a glove, and this
Okay.
glove is attached to the software, and she can like loop her voice by like going like this, and then stop the loop, and then play the loop, and she can create reverb by throwing out like two fingers this way, and she can create delay by going this way. So she's almost like dancing with her hand like it's like she's doing the Vogue or whatever, but it's looping and adding reverb and freezing reverbs and all sorts of stuff like that. And I'm just like, holy cow, that she can just kind of like control that stuff. And it really just like makes me think like where's music headed next? And I know in the mixing, because I work at a studio too called KMG in Denver. It's an awesome studio, and one thing I know about the studio world nowadays is that everything's moving to Dolby Atmos sound. So in the next like probably 10 years, you're going to need to mix in Atmos for almost all your releases, which is going to be crazy because like that's an expensive setup to have at home. Um, but you're gonna have to bring back the mixing engineer, which is
You mentioned something about, I liked what you said about the cube earlier and be able to grab a cube and manipulate that cube. And it reminded me that I spent about from 2021 to even current to last almost 2 years in developing virtual reality. Going in when I'm not developing virtual reality, I'm not creating virtual reality, but we launched our first VR nightclub and about 4 or 5 months ago in VR chat. Actually, it was first in Altspace, but then it was in VR chat. But the thought was, when I talk with people about that question, is what is VR going to do for the music industry and going in and creating virtual instruments that you can bend it this way and do it with this way with your hands and gloves, and you're in that room and you're conducting an orchestra, you're doing this, but you aren't having to wear a glove because the motion sensors are tracking your hands while you have the headset on,
Apple
and now you
Vision.
don't have to have anything, and you'll just
Yeah,
eventually you'll get the glasses, and eventually we'll get contacts, so now you could have 1,000 different instruments, and you could pull up one over here and pull up one over here and scroll just like an iPod of making music and have in your studio you might be limited to 30 pieces of gear or 20 pieces of gear. Here you could have 10 access to 10,000 pieces of gear and be
Yeah, that's
putting
the
in
thing.
and manipulate them the way you want, or even create your
Yeah,
own
do whatever you
instrument.
want. Yeah, create your own instrument would be nuts. I'm imagining the contacts now, and it's like your girlfriend's trying to talk to you, or your partner's trying to talk to you. Babe, are you automating right now? Like, no. You make a beats.
There, there was an episode. Oh my god! Well, it was an episode of
I'm
not
thinking
Black.
Black Mirror episode.
I'm thinking it's a Black Mirror episode
Yeah,
where the guy basically finds out his wife cheated on him because they have this device that records everything they see.
yep. That was Black Mirror.
That
Yeah,
was Black Mirror, yeah, and then he ends up ripping it. Spoiler alert, but he ends up ripping it.
together and like all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff. Like, it got real dark.
So
Real
I mean,
fast.
that's kind of going to be the interesting thing to see when we start getting that Google Glass, or our glasses are able to record everything we see, and we can go back and play it back. So that's interesting. But you know what? We're running out of time here a little bit. I want to ask you one last question, two last questions, actually three last questions. What do you prefer doing when you're taking a break from music?
Oh, I just recently got into archery. I needed so usually it's video games. I'm a huge video game nerd. I just started playing Kingdom Hearts 3 again. I just rewatched like a 3 hour summary. I'm a huge nerd. So anime and video games. I just played The Last of Us again. I love that game. Been playing Diablo a bit. But big video game nerd. But I recently got into archery because I needed something without a screen. So there's an archery range like 0.2 miles from my house.
Oh,
And I was
nice.
like, yeah, that'll do for a hobby. Like $200 later, I have a bow and arrow, and I'm just shooting these targets and stuff like that. And so that's been awesome. Just like doing archery and getting out. And I can just go get a target, and I can go into the woods and throw it into the woods and just shoot and hang out, stuff like that. So that's been awesome. But otherwise, I'm a humongous nerd.
What's your
Final
favorite? Oh, go ahead.
What were you gonna say? Sorry.
No, you said Final Fantasy. We're going to lead in with that.
What my favorite like kind of games are? Yeah, like Final Fantasy is my favorite. Final Fantasy 10, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 9. Chrono Trigger was huge for me when I was growing up. It was like this old Super Nintendo RPG. Yeah, a lot of RPG games like Kingdom Hearts. I like anything with a really good story to it. I love the narrative. I'm not really into like the Call of Duty and like the grinding for levels and stuff like that. If it doesn't have a good story, I'm out. But yeah, I'm a huge nerd with the
And
old
speaking
games.
of stories, you mentioned anime. What is your favorite anime? Top anime you can watch over and over and over and over and over again.
Probably Death Note. Honestly, I could
Death
probably
Note. Yeah.
I
Okay.
just love how crazy the whole philosophy behind it got, you know. But really into Attack on Titan, I am just really mad at them. I'm about to read the manga and just spoil it, but like, they've been just holding out on this ending to the story for like 2 years now. But Naruto is really inspirational to me too.
Yeah.
A lot of my songwriting inspiration comes from Naruto. Like, let's take this little weak melody, this little like boy that nobody likes, and then become Hokage, become giant bassline, you know? Like, you remember me, that little dinky piano riff in the beginning? Now I'm like 4 serum patches, like, blah, you know? So that's really inspirational to me. But yeah, Death Note, Attack on Titan. I grew up on Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that, and Outlaw Star and Gundam. But like, I know like Dragon Ball Z, I look back and I'm like, this is the most poorly written shit I've ever seen. Goku goes up, Goku dies. Goku eats sensu bean, comes back, gets wished back to life, powers up even more, defeats enemy. like, come on, guys. But yeah, those are my favorite animes for sure.
Is there anything else you want to let our DJ Sessions fans know about before we let you go?
No. Local promoters, holler at me. I'd love to come to your town. I'd love to come to Seattle. That's one of my most listened to towns. I know that's where you said you're out of. Played in Seattle once before, but yeah, holler at me. And I just have this album coming out, so stay tuned for the album, Ghost Ride the Spaceship. It's my like debut concept album. And I'm really stoked for that. I've got some tracks coming out on some really cool labels coming out soon as well, and some more cool collabs with all sorts of dope people. And then if you're in the Colorado area, please just come on down and check out the show on August 19th at Cervantes, because we're bringing in loads of production. I'm dumping out all the forbidden IDs that and all the crazy, stupid remixes from Cardi B to Led Zeppelin to Queen to Tyler the Creator and all that stuff. So it's going to be a heck of a night. So don't miss out on that if you're in Colorado. But yeah, I think that's basically it.
Awesome. Well, we do have an exclusive mix that you're going to be giving us here, right?
Yes, yes. I just have to film that. Yeah, and my webcam, I did it. OBS stopped recording audio halfway through, so I don't know.
Nice.
My hard drive
Well,
issue, but yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having you. I'm having a little
Yeah.
technical difficulty here. My mouse kind of goes on the fritz, and I have to unplug it and plug it back in.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah.
that's why I keep coming over to the side of the screen here. But again, thank you for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having you. We'll definitely be following back up with you to follow you and what you're doing. And hopefully, yeah, we can see you in Seattle soon. By the way, where can people find out more information about you and what you got going on?
Also, stay tuned to my Instagram, my Spotify, and Twitter, and all that kind of stuff. But mostly Instagram is where most of the posting happens.
Awesome. And that's right below you right there. It's Homemade Spaceship at Instagram. All right. Awesome. Well, Rob, thank you so much for coming on the series. It was a pleasure having you.
It's been awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. On that note, don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, Insta. Oh, wait, no, I got to call it X now. It's no more Twitter. Find us on TikTok, all those places out there. But the best place to go is thedjsessions.com. You can find our mobile app. You can find 24 news stories a day, over 600 news stories a month, exclusive mixes, live interviews, contest giveaways, and more. And over 2,400 episodes in our library of over 13 years of doing the show. That's at thedjsessions.com. I'm your host, Darren. That's Rob, or Homemade Spaceship, coming in from, I'm used to pointing that way. But coming in from Denver, Colorado, and I'm in Seattle in the virtual studios for the DJ Sessions, virtual sessions. And remember, on the DJ Sessions, the music never stops. Oh!